Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for being here. As you guys know, I am busy with some human trafficking, and this week I will be looking into the issue of being trafficked for labor exploitation, and let's jump straight into it. So, being trafficked for labor exploitation, just like any other form of labor of human trafficking, is a human rights violation and is basically the recruitment, harboring, transportation, the provision or obtaining of a person for labor services, and it is done by somebody who's a non-state actor, and it is done through force, fraud, cohesion, threats, and those people are used involuntarily. So the people are not there voluntarily, they're not there because they want to be there. So they are there through servitude, peonage, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, debt bondage or slavery. So peonage is basically when you work to pay off debt, and then debt bondage is when pretty much explain kind of this a similar thing. So basically the person is not there because they want to be, and the person cannot control the conditions under which they work. So basically one can be traded pre-exploitation, and then you get into the exploitation phase where you're just treated as a modern day slave. So they are forced to work for little to no remuneration, and obviously they work under threatening circumstances. So if you don't do it, then they threaten to do something to you. They use intimidation, there's the accumulated debt, and then there's also the part where if you're an immigrant, right, if you're not from that particular country where they have taken you to, they take your identity documents and they take all your other important possessions, and then they threaten that if you don't do what we say, then we will report you to the immigration authorities, and then you'll get deported or arrested. The person basically works under the menace of penalty. So they basically work because if you don't do what they say, there will be repercussions for you. So there's physical abduction and violence, there's physical confinement. So basically they themselves will imprison you. There's sexual violence. Psychologically, obviously you belong to them because you believe, which is a realistic thing to be scared of because you're under their control. You believe that if you don't do what they say, you're basically setting yourself up for major abuse, for more abuse than you're already experiencing. There's also, they don't tell you what exactly you'll be doing. They don't tell you the job specifications. They like deceive you when it comes to the terms of the work you're supposed to do. They'll threaten to dismiss you from the current employment. They'll threaten to exclude you from any other employment that you'll have in the future. They'll deprive you from food, shelter, other necessities, and they will also shift you to worse working conditions. So also they will exclude you from your community and the social life, and so you'll just lose your social status. So all the consent basically is done under improper circumstances, and also everything that these people, the employers do, is contrary to the labor laws. So the money that they pay you, the working conditions, the working hours, your safe to your house, all of that is out the window. They do not care. They just want the work done, the production, the proceeds. They just want the work done. So they don't really care about you as their employee. Okay, so some of these people will be employed in private homes or a commune, just a place where they're isolated from everybody else so that they cannot speak up. They will stay with slum landlords, which is just a bad landlord. They will stay with camping field exploiters or illegal accommodation. So most of them, or some of them, are actually hidden in plain sight, like a domestic worker whose movements are very regulated, and they work for long hours for little to no pay. So the worst form of this kind of trade is child labor. So children between the ages of 4 until 18 years will be recruited for maybe military purposes. So they will actually be in the front line of a war or a front line of a combat, and they will actually be forced to do very hectically violent things. And in addition to that, children and other people will get into gang related activities. They will get into pornography, sex work. They will work in kitchens as kitchen hands. So the hospitality industries, restaurants, hotels. So most fields that accommodate or where this kind of trade can be used or exploited the most are agriculture, construction, manufacturing, factory work, hospitality, garbage scavenging for food or for items that can be recycled, street work. So with street work, you have the vendors, so the people who work alongside the roads. You have people who work for transport, so drivers, and you also have beggars. So any kind of beggar, the beggars who are at the robots, any kind of beggar. And there's also fishing, car washes, and nail bars. So all those places are industries where all these people that are being exploited and who have actually been trafficked, you can find them in all those kind of industries. So who are these people? Who's vulnerable to this kind of trafficking or trade? So it is illegal workers. Like I have already mentioned, if you are in a country illegally, then the people who are trafficking you have all the power, because they can just use the knowledge that they have on you and threaten to expose you for being illegal. And then you have people with low literacy, or people who are poor, people who come from poor economic backgrounds or low economic background, people who are below the poverty line, unemployed people, homeless people, children who are in foster care, people who have been left devastated from wars, people who have cultural and language difficulties. So this one will be like, if you're in another country and obviously you don't know the language, you don't know what's going on, it's going to be hard for you to find help because you can't even communicate with anybody. And the last one is substance addicts. So it's people who have maybe alcohol addictions or drug addictions, and basically you just use them because you can give them a little something at the end of the day for them to quench their thirst, or be able to get whatever drug that they want, but they have to do a whole lot of work, whereas you just give them a little just to satisfy them for that moment, and then obviously they're gonna come back because also they have nowhere else to go. So the employers will pay the victims themselves, or they will pay the middleman or the agent. So whoever trafficked you or whatever syndicate, they will pay those people, or they will pay you directly. And women and children are obviously more vulnerable because they don't have power, and they are socially marginalized, and just because of the social status that they have, as opposed to men. So in South Africa, there's quite a number of people who are living in slavery. It's very real, it's not fiction, it is happening. And girls between the ages of 16 and 20 and 21 and 25 are very vulnerable, because one, you're getting into the workforce, which means that you will be opening or exposing yourself up to false job opportunities, and two, you're getting into relationships, and those relationships may just be fronts where the boyfriend is using you just to traffic you or exploit you. And also in South Africa, child labor in the form of sexual exploitation or begging is quite rife. So those kids that we see at the robots, they're begging or whatever, those kids might actually be as a result of human trafficking. And also children who are vulnerable are also children without IDs or disabled kids. So it's very hard for those kids to get into the education system. So if you're not going to school, then you sit in the street and you beg. And also girls are mostly used for sex work and domestic work, and boys are used for agriculture, food services, and for street vending. Some preventative measures would include addressing the vulnerabilities. So all those vulnerable people, women, children, the poor, the illiterate, homeless people, disabled people. If you take care of those people, then they won't be as vulnerable to being trafficked. Not that the trafficking would stop, period, but the scale that it is at now would be lessened to some degree. And also, when it comes to the employers, if they say that there's a demand for a certain market in a certain industry, right? There's no way there is there's no way the demand for a job outweighs the number of people willing to do that job. There is so much unemployment in South Africa. I don't think there's an industry that could say, oh, there's nobody who wants to work in this industry. So it would make no sense in South Africa with the number of unemployment rates. It's ridiculous. So I think when it comes to the employers, it's just that they're very greedy and they're trying to make themselves more money, so they'd rather employ people who have been trafficked, people who they can exploit, over people who know their rights and know how much they should be paid and know what conditions they should be working in. So it's better or easier for an employer to employ somebody coming from another country or whatever the case may be. And with that, the criminalization of the people using these services is a no-brainer, because if it wasn't for them, these people, there wouldn't be a demand for these people who are being trafficked. And also addressing the due diligence that is done. Like, how do people or trafficked individuals get into your country to begin with? Like the porous borders where, it's just easy for people to come in and out of a country. It doesn't help the issue, because it starts at the borders. And also it means that there are people in high places who are playing a critical role in the people getting into the country. Because if your due diligence was being done, then everybody who comes into the country, their IDs would be checked, passports, whatever kind of identification would be checked, and you would know if the person wants to be here, if they are meant to be here, why they're even here, and all those things. Immediate identification, like when a person comes into your country or when a person comes to your workplace, identification: who are you, where do you come from, why are you here, stuff like that. No brainer. No prosecution or detention for people who have been trafficked, because now you're just re-victimizing them, because they've already been victimized by being trafficked, brought to another country or another region, in another different region from where they're originally from. So you putting them in detention or arresting them or whatever, you're just re-victimizing them, especially if, yes, they are illegal, but it wasn't their choice. They didn't volunteer to come here, they were trafficked. So there's also some due diligence when it comes to that, because usually it's so easy to just say, oh, they're an immigrant, they're illegal, and you just wanna ostracize them and all that. But some people didn't choose to be here. You do not know the reason why and how they got to be in that country. So for protection from further harm for the victims is very important, because you don't know how long they've been in the country, you don't know what they've been subjected to, you don't know the working conditions that they've been in. So again, the re-victimization should be very minimized. The material and psychological care and support, like I just mentioned, we don't know what they've had to deal with, we don't know what they had to go through. So that's also vitally important. Legal assistance, because the employers, the agents, the middlemen, whoever brought them here should be held accountable. And to some degree, I feel like the victims will feel vindicated, if their traffickers are held accountable. And then there's also the asset confiscation, where the assets are used to help the victim. So whatever proceeds, if they were working in a factory or wherever they were working, the proceeds that come from that, the money that they never even saw because they were underpaid or not even paid at all those proceeds are then used to help the victims maybe get home, or while they're still here, buy them food or whatever. So that's also important. With this whole labor exploitation, trafficking, it's very similar to labor exploitation, period, because some people in South Africa work under very strenuous, unfair, inhumane conditions, and they're underpaid and they work long hours. So I figure the only difference is that you were taken from your country unwillingly to another country. But labor exploitation is very real, even in South Africa. It's bizarre. But that's all I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's anything else you'd like to add, please do so in the comment section. And while you're here, if you haven't already, please do subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.